Hey guys, my name is Cyan Gore and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are doing my wrap up of all the books that I read in July, and I read 25 books throughout the month, so strap in, get ready, because we have a lot to go through. We might be here for a while, but I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. I am gonna try to talk about these as quickly as I can so that we're not sitting here literally forever, but I do like the sound of my own voice, I guess, so we'll see how well that works out. I did have a TBR of, I think, 8 books, and I read 2 of them. So I did not complete my TBR, but still, I feel like I had a great reading month. A lot of these books I look back at and I did like them, so that's all that matters. I also want to talk about the stats. As I said, I read 25 books, 17 of those were romances, 4 dark romances, 2 suspenseful romances, 1 YA, 11 contemporary. Then I read 1 historical fiction, 1 mystery slash thriller, 4 fantasy romances, and 1 sci-fi. And in total, I read 10,471 pages. Obviously, it does not matter how much you read, but I just think it's fun to look at the stats, and it also makes me feel like I maybe need to get a life. Actually, no, it doesn't. I'm fine where I'm at. But let's go ahead and get started with the books that I read this month. So first off, I started this month with some dark romances, and the first one I decided to pick up was The Ritual by Chantal Tessier. It is a college-based romance, and at this college there's a group called the Lords who are trained to be killers. They also, for some reason, once they get initiated into this group, they get a woman as a prize who is their chosen one, who basically can do whatever the man wants, and usually they use these women for their bodies. Let's just say that. It was very dark and I did not like it at all. I will take serial killers any day. I will take guys who are mean, bad people, but what I don't like is non-consensual acts in books, and I feel like that's what happened a lot in here. I know there's a gray area where sometimes the character may be saying no, but in their mind they like it. I don't like that because she's saying no, okay? You need to be 100% sure. So for me, that's why I just couldn't stand this book. The plot also just went everywhere. It might be some people's cup of tea, but it was not mine. I think I gave this 2 stars because I wasn't bored, which is weird. I think the reason why I enjoyed some parts, I wouldn't necessarily even say enjoyed, but I found it entertaining just how wild this whole thing was. So I guess that's why I wasn't bored. I don't really know. But yeah, I won't be continuing on in this series. It was just too much for me. And then I picked up Leather and Lark by Bryn Weaver. This is the second book in the Ruinous Love trilogy, and all of these are about serial killers. This one's a little bit different because he is a hitman who is trying to retire, and she is part of like this family dynasty where they own like a muffin company, and you know, it's very dark. Sometimes they have to use hitmen, stuff like that. They end up in an arranged marriage somehow. There's also another serial killer that's like coming after them. Honestly, sometimes I forget what I read in these books. So that's all I've got for you on the synopsis. I will just say though that in this one, I loved their meet cute. I do remember that. I thought it was really cute and it had great potential. But then once they got together, it just wasn't my favorite. I did give it, I think, 3.5 stars. It wasn't bad. I just liked the first book, Butcher and Blackbird, better than this one. And then I read The Predator by Runix. This is the first book in the Darkverse series. I have heard so many people talk about this series. It's not super dark, or at least this one wasn't. It's more of dark because of the fact that it is a mafia romance. And in this one, I don't even know the character's name, so I'm not even going to try to make myself remember, but I remember it's a girl who her father's part of this mafia group. She creates a code that can like destroy everyone basically, and then someone stole the code. She's trying to find it. She thinks that her father's enemy has it, goes and tries to get it back, but they don't have it, so now they're gonna team up together and try to find the codes, and then somehow they're like enemies to lovers. I don't really remember. The one thing I do remember is that the main male character had no personality in my opinion, and I just don't love that like dark, mysterious type of guy. I want him to have good banter and be funny, so that's why I didn't necessarily love this one, but it was okay. I did give it 3 stars, and people have told me that the series gets better, so who knows, maybe I need to keep going. We will see. And then I read Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I loved this book. It is about 2 people who absolutely do not like each other, and they get kidnapped together, and then the aftermath of them, because of course they do escape, they don't stay kidnapped forever. What I loved about this book is that it was so emotionally heavy and dark. Of course, the kidnapping, that is also what makes it a dark romance. But I like that the kidnapping was probably like 25% of this book, but then after that it gets so much better. It's just about them dealing with their grief and everything that happened between them, and it is romance, so they do end up falling for one another, and it's kind of like this forbidden love, and it was just good. It's one of those books that I will always think about, and this one just hit really different because it's talking about tragedy, and so that is why it was so emotional for me, and I like that a lot because it's tragedy, grief, all of these things, them healing together on their own. It's just a whirlwind, and I would highly recommend it. I did give this one 5 stars. It is just one of those books that I'll always remember, and when I look at it, I'm gonna be like, you made me feel things I didn't think I was capable of. It's really telling of an author's writing when they can make you feel that way. So that is that one. And then after reading all of those dark romances in one week, I needed to pick up something light and fluffy, so I went to a tried and true light and fluffy author, and I started her Lakefront Billionaire series. This is the first book in the series, Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. I really enjoyed this book. It is about Julian and Dahlia. They were like childhood friends growing up, and she moves back to Lake Wisteria. I think he's like a property developer, something like that. And she is an interior designer. They have like that bantery relationship where they don't actually hate one another, but they just grew up always teasing one another. But in this one, Dahlia is just going through a breakup, so she moves back home, and they decide to partner up and renovate this historical home in Lake Wisteria. So they are working together, and it is so cute because of the family in here. His family is very close knit to her family. Their moms are best friends. That's how they kind of grew up together, and you get to see both of their families in this book a lot, and it's just so cute. The teasing, the meddling moms, all of it was so fun for me, and I really enjoyed that. And then I also really enjoyed their relationship, and of course their banter was really good in this one. I think it was just so cute. It is a little bit slower pace, and Lauren Asher always includes one little traumatic thing that they're going through, so of course that is in there, and I think it was resolved in a really cute way, and I just really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 4 stars, maybe more like a 4.5, because it was so good, and it's by far my favorite Lauren Asher book that I've read. I only read the Dreamland Billionaire series and then these two. I liked the Dreamland Billionaire series. I didn't love it, but I did really love this book. But then I read the second one, and I'm sad to say that it was a disappointment. This is Love Unwritten. This one's about Raphael and Ellie, and I thought I was gonna love it because it's the single dad nanny trope, which I devour every single time. But in this one, I did not like it. Number one, the family was not in there as much, and I think the family aspect really is why I loved the first book so much. In this one, they weren't there as much, mostly just through like text messages and phone calls, so I didn't really love that. Also, she is a singer/songwriter, and towards the end you really get to see a lot of that. There are lyrics in here, and that's one of those tropes, like micro tropes, that I just cannot stand. I cringe every single time, so I didn't like that. I also didn't like that Raphael just seemed whiny, and it seemed repetitive. Like I said, in her books she always includes one kind of like trauma that is preventing them from being in a relationship, and in this one his trauma was overly spoken about. It was very repetitive, and I felt like he just kept on in his internal monologue repeating that he wanted to get better, but his actions weren't getting better. So yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite. I gave it 2.5 stars because I've just read better, and it was such a disappointment, but you might love it. Okay, and then after that I let my dogs pick my reads for a week, and they picked some pretty good ones. Okay, the first one was Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. These are small town romances. This actually comes before the Chestnut Spring series, and they are being republished, so I am going to start the series and buy all of them with their new covers that are super cute, by the way. But in this one we are following Vaughn and Billy. Billy is a horse trainer. She comes to work for Vaughn, who just inherited this business from his grandfather who passed away, and when she comes to work for him, she is in charge of training this very pretty much untrainable horse and getting him in shape for the racing season. So it is a workplace romance on a ranch. They're training horses. To be honest, this book is nothing special, but it was fun. It was exactly what I needed when I needed it. I do like our main character Billy a lot. She reminds me of Willa from the Chestnut Spring series. Vaughn was just, you know, your typical grumpy character, and honestly I've read so many romances with a grumpy male main character to where it doesn't really faze me anymore. I don't really care that much if they're grumpy or not, but Billy did make up for it in this book, and it's still just one of those books that it's not going to be like a top tier romance for me, but I do recommend them. And it seems like it would be a great palate cleanser as well. So yeah, this one I gave 3.5 maybe? I don't know. It's sitting somewhere in there. And then finally, I picked up The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Let me just say, V.E. Schwab, please write my obituary because I swear she can make any story interesting. And if you can find a way to make my life sound interesting, I'm all for it. Because V.E. Schwab's writing is just so whimsical and beautiful and perfect. Literally everything about this book was perfection. In this book, you were obviously following Addie LaRue. She basically has like a curse. I don't want to say how she gets it because I feel like that ruins some of it, but in this curse, whenever she meets someone and then they go their separate ways, or literally they could just leave the room or something like that, they'll forget Addie LaRue exists, they'll forget their whole interaction with one another, and it's just like it never happened. So that is how she is invisible. And then something happens midway, and I don't want to say, I feel like everyone always says it when they're reading this book, but it is a huge plot point that just completely changes the direction of this book. So I'm not going to say anything else about it. Just know it is very people driven. You're seeing all of these years go by of her meeting different people, falling in love multiple times, and then them just forgetting her. So it is kind of sad in that sense, and it makes you really feel for her character. But I just loved this book so much. Everything about it was perfect. If you couldn't tell already, I did give it a 5 stars. I think it's going to be one of my favorite books of the year that I've read. It was just perfection. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. I love Addie LaRue. I love another character that we meet in here, and it is such a heartfelt story. The end is kind of open-ended where I feel like there could be more, but I don't think there is going to be, so it kind of leaves you with some questions, but it's so beautiful. So definitely recommend it. 5 star for sure. Cannot stop thinking about this book. And then I also read another romance called On the Line by Naomi Loud. This is a restaurant romance, so it's about a line cook and a server. She comes from a very rich family. He comes from a very dysfunctional family. When they start working there together, they just form a connection. And I really enjoyed this book. I actually think this is like a 4-star book because it's just relatable. I personally have server experience and bartender experience, so I feel like that is why I just enjoyed it so much, because it's so true to how it actually works when you work at a restaurant. If you know, you know. But I really enjoyed it. I think it's a fun book. There are some heavier topics in here, so I would look up trigger warnings. And our main love interest, think of Lip from Shameless. Like, literally look at that. Tell me that's not Lip. It is, right? There are some scenes where I was like, whoa, because it is a spicy book, and the spice was like kind of out there for me, but still, I had a good time reading it, and I would recommend it. It isn't a literary work of art, it's a little ridiculous, but it was fun. Just trust me on it. And then I read The Hawthorne Legacy. This is the second book in the Inheritance Games trilogy. I did not like this. I'm gonna be so honest with you. I don't know what it is about this series. I just don't care enough, I think. It's very, very much so YA, which I didn't have a problem with the Natural series, but for this one, I'm just getting bored. I think because it's mostly like riddles and stuff and them trying to solve these puzzles, and to me that's not as interesting as like in the Naturals when they're trying to find serial killers. I think that's exactly what it is. So yeah, I didn't love it. I gave it like a 2.5 because some parts were just so dragged out, and I honestly really wanted to DNF this and just Google what happens. I don't think I'm gonna read the third book because I'm at this point over it, but that's just my opinions on it. I know so many people that love this series. It just doesn't have enough going on to really hold my interest. It feels like it's a lot of back and forth of we get to this puzzle, we solve it. Oops, it's another puzzle. Like, I couldn't get into it, but that is that one. And then I think these are the only 2 books that I didn't have in videos, but it's because I just really wanted to enjoy them on my own, and I did. And that was Part of Your World and Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Love her writing. She is a new auto-buy author for me. In Part of Your World, we are following Alexis. She is a doctor from the city, and she breaks down in a small town where she meets Ethan. They end up having a one-night stand, but then she just keeps coming back to him. The issue with that is that she is a doctor by legacy. Her parents were both very famous doctors, her brother's a famous doctor, and she is expected to stay in the city and basically take over once her parents are gone. And she is also going through a divorce with another doctor who her parents love because of his high status in the medical field, and she just knows that her family and friends aren't going to vibe well with Daniel because he is a small town owner of this like Airbnb situation. She knows that her family and friends are going to be judgmental of that. And not just that, but the fact that she is, I believe, like almost 10 years older than him, him. And to me, I really, really enjoyed this romance because of Daniel. He was so cute and wholesome, and I just loved his banter with her. But I was getting quite frustrated with our main female character, Alexis, because at this point, you're 35, do what you want to do, fall in love with who you fall in love with, and why do you care so much about what your friends and family think? I mean, I get it, okay? I used to also be like that, but I'm 25 and I'm past that stage where I care what others think. She's in her late 30s, okay? She should be over that by now. But I still really enjoyed this book, and I did give it 4 stars. It was good. It was cute. It was a fun time. Okay, and then, as I mentioned, I read Yours Truly by her as well. And this one we are following 2 more doctors, Bree and Daniel. They kind of have a terrible meet cute, but it's because Daniel has anxiety, so he doesn't really know how to have social interactions and not be a little bit awkward. But then something happens and they end up fake dating. And of course, we all know how that trope goes. They start falling for one another. And in this book, I really enjoyed our characters. The representation of anxiety and how it feels when you're doing small, everyday things that might just be very easygoing for other people, and how it is not for you if you have anxiety, was just spot on. I really loved Daniel's character. I think he was cute, sweet, once again, just a wholesome man that must be protected at all costs. He's also a very better man than I am. If you know the drama that happened in this book, better person than me, because fist would be flying. But anyways, I really enjoyed this book. I think that their banter again was just top tier. The way that Bree understood his anxiety and tried to help him deal with it was so freaking cute. It's also really cute because they start off communicating by like writing letters to one another. So if you like the letter micro trope, I think you would like this as well. There was like a part though where there's a third act breakup and it's because of the miscommunication trope, which I don't love, but still in this book, I just loved her character so much that it really didn't matter. So for this one, I did give it a 4.5. I like it a little bit more than Part of Your World, but still, both of them were just so good. Highly recommend. Okay, so next up, I was looking for some romances that had no spice that I could recommend to you guys. So I read them for a week. The first one that I read was The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. This is about a girl who is a bodyguard and she is protecting this famous actor in the small town in Texas. But the thing is that his mother is sick while he is at home visiting, so he doesn't want her to be stressed out and to worry even more. So he doesn't want her to know that that's his bodyguard, and in order to keep that from happening, they pretend to be dating. And I thought this romance was so cute. It was so sweet and wholesome. Their connection, just, you really felt it. There is like a little bit of cheesiness in there at the end because he is being stalked, which I forgot to mention, that's the whole reason why he has a bodyguard in the first place. But he has a stalker, and then like at the end there's kind of like a crime stopper thing that happens where our main female character, you actually get to see her do her job and be a bodyguard in that sense. And that part was a little bit cheesy, but it is a romance. This author is good at writing romance. Maybe not like an action scene, but it was still really good. I enjoyed it, and I just remember like giggling and smiling anytime they had the smallest amount of romance in there. Like literally they could just look at each other and I would be like, oh, so sweet. So yeah, this one was really good, and I think that Catherine Center probably will be an auto by author from now on too, because I just really thoroughly enjoyed my time reading it. I think this one is like 4-star for me, maybe like a 4.5, because it is really good, but it's not going to be a book that I'm constantly thinking about, you know? And then I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is like the most iconic YA romance. We have all probably heard of it before. This one is about Liz and Wes. They are both high school students. They have always lived across the street from one another, and they've also always, while growing up, had like that playful banter where they kind of tease one another. And Liz is trying to win over the heart of a boy that she likes, so Wes is going to help her do that. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like fake dating, but it's like fake interest. Like he is going to show a lot of interest in Liz so that the other guy will also be like, you're right, there is something about Liz, if that makes sense. It's got all the rom-com feels to it. There's like a makeover scene, there's prom, there's a basketball game, a high school party, all of that is in there. But for me, and I know a lot of people love this book, I think that I can only do YA fantasies from now on because the world that they're in just makes up for it. But when it comes to YA romances, I just find them so cheesy. And for some reason for me, this is such a personal issue. Any of us that are older out there, you know when you're in high school and you think you're an adult and the world is yours, and then you get to like your 20s and you're like, oh my goodness, in high school I was such a baby. That's how it feels about reading about high schoolers. And so in my mind, I know they're like like 17 and 18, but in my mind, I'm literally picturing 12-year-olds. And it's like cringy to picture really young people like making out and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know. Okay. That is just my issue with it. That is why I don't think I enjoyed this, but it was a 3-star because I can say that it was not bad at all. I just had personal issues with it and this genre overall. So it definitely wasn't her writing or anything. I'm over YA romances, like I think I've said a million times now. And then I read Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This is about a woman who is currently going through a divorce and she has 2 kids and she is single for like the first time in a very long time. So she wants to get back out there because she just really hasn't been herself, especially because she is also dealing with the grief from losing her mother. And so she decides to go back out there, you know, dress up really nice. She goes to a dog park and she has a meet cute with this guy. And then they start going on dates. And as it turns out, he is actually only there to help fix up one of the houses that his parents left him. But in reality, he lives like 3 hours away. So he's really just there for the summer. And she's like, you know what? I don't want anything super serious. Why don't we just have a little summer romance with one another? And that's what happens. But of course, in these types of books, it's never what they intend for it to be, right? They fall in love, blah, blah, blah. This is what I personally like to call a quiet romance. There are no grand gestures like in the movie where they confess their love by running after them in an airport and stuff like that. There's nothing like that. There's also not a lot at stake. It's literally just 2 people deciding if they should keep this going or not because she has kids and he lives far away. They're not like necessarily giving up something for one another, if that makes sense too, because that is also something that we see, like for instance, in Part of Your World, she's giving up her life being a doctor and moving from the city to a small town. But in this one, there's really nothing like that. It's just a wholesome kind of love. And also the things that they do for one another is very acts of service, I would say. There are a lot of quotes in here that I found very relatable and just beautiful. And it was just one of those romances that was very cute. And I'm super happy that I read it. I did give this 4 stars. And I think I need to read more from this author too. And then I read When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I've heard a lot about this author and her writing. This one is about a girl who is a famous rock star, I believe, and she needs like a break because she's just been going through it, you know, like we all are. So she wants to go on a vacation and she wants to go to like Rome and Italy, but she can't. The closest Rome she can go to is from Kentucky, so she finds herself there. And another microtrope that is in this is the whole car breaking down and she gets stuck in this town. And while she's there, she meets Noah, who is the small town baker. She's going to be staying with him because he has space for her, and they're just like complete opposites. He's a little bit of a grumpy character at first, but one thing I will say about this book is lots of the time, even though there's no spice, their internal monologue is always on like each other's physical appearances, I feel like. And it got a little bit repetitive when they kept on in their internal monologue saying like, no, I can't like this person because she's a rock star, or no, I can't like him because he's just a baker and we don't live close. So that's why it wasn't my favorite. I think too this one had closed door, but it was still good. It was what I would expect out of a short, sweet little rom-com. So I did give it, I think, 3 stars because it was cute. It was okay. It's just not very memorable in my opinion. And then I did a 24-hour readathon and I read 5 books during that readathon, the first of which was Flock by Kate Stewart. I really don't know how to categorize this. I don't know because this is the first book in, I believe, a trilogy, if this is gonna end up being a dark romance and this is just the intro book. And I also don't know if maybe you would call it like a suspense romance. In my mind, that's kind of what it is because I am like questioning what is even happening in this book. But in this one we're following Cecilia. She moves to this new town for the summer. She just graduated high school and she's going to spend her summer, I think either her summer or she's going to take a gap year. I can't remember specifically, but she's going to be living with her very rich father who owns this huge business. And it's kind of just like, in my mind, I'm picturing Amazon because she describes working basically on an assembly line kind of thing. I don't really know, but that's what it's giving. And while she's there, she meets Sean. He is very much like a golden retriever type of character, and they instantly kind of start talking, hanging out and stuff. And then she meets his best friend Dom, and at first they don't really like each other. He is very much the black cat energy of the friends, and they both also seem to be hanging out with a group of guys that are kind of giving like gang vibes in a sense. I don't want to just throw that out there, but it felt like it because they're like meeting up in a car garage, having parties, seem like they might be in with a dangerous crowd. So she starts hanging out with them, and it is a why choose, which I did not see coming. I thought originally it was just going to be a love triangle, but it's a why choose, a very mature one, might I add, because both of the guys literally do not care that she is dating both of them. But yeah, I'm a little confused by like what the plot is going to be. In this one, I feel like we were mostly getting her and these two guys forming their connections, and it was very like romance heavy, but you knew there was something else going on, you just don't know what. I will say though, I did give this one 3 stars because while I liked it, I was just confused. So I don't know, I am intrigued, and I do think I'm gonna continue on with the series because I just want to know like what is actually the plot of this book. And then I also read Lightlark by Alex Astor. In this one, Lightlark is this island that disappears, and then every 100 years it comes back, but only for 100 days. There are different realms. Like our main character, she's from the wildling realm. Think of like vines and leaves and nature and stuff. But there's also darklings. Like think of a world where there's just shadows everywhere and it's kind of dark and creepy. And then there's sunlings. So I imagine like a gold gilded kingdom pretty much. So there's all these realms. All the rulers of the realms go to the island every 100 years, and they're trying to do something in order to fulfill this prophecy. The prophecy is given to you early, but of course it's worded to where they don't really know what they're supposed to do. They're just trying to figure it out, and they think that they have to sacrifice one of the rulers. They just don't know who. And our main character, she is the ruler of the wildlings. She actually has no powers like the rest of the rulers, but they don't know that. So she's going in and faking it because she doesn't want to be the one that gets sacrificed. And while she's there, she finds herself in a love triangle with 2 of the other rulers. There's like betrayal, friendships, all this stuff going on. And this I feel like was marketed as giving Hunger Games vibes and trials. And granted, they do have these trials, but the trials in here are very short and they only take place every once in a while. Most of this book is like scheming and trying to figure out what they're actually supposed to do, and her going on like these little side quests with some of the other characters. So it wasn't what I was expecting, you know, and the trials didn't feel as like brutal and high stakes as I wanted them to, but it still wasn't bad. It's just not something that like hooked my attention as much as I wanted it to. So I did give this one 3 stars. I just don't think I'm going to continue this series because I just want to read books that literally I'm hooked. So that's not one of them. And then I also read So Not Meant to Be by Megan Quinn. This one is the second book in the Kane Brothers series. In this one, we are following JP and Kelsey. He's a billionaire. She works for him. They have to go on a business trip together. So they're going to be staying in like the same penthouse while they're on this business trip. And he has been fawning over this girl since the day he met her, but he is known as like the playboy type of character. So she hasn't really taken him seriously, definitely hasn't given him a chance. But while they're on this trip, they start connecting a little bit more. And we all know how the rest of the story goes. I enjoyed this book. It was like a fast-paced, easy read. The writing is very digestible. But looking back on it, JP Kane was just so whiny. Felt like I was literally reading a toddler throwing a temper tantrum because he was so upset that Kelsey wouldn't give him a chance, but she wouldn't take him seriously because he never acted seriously. So that is why. Mystery solved. It was just a little bit too long too for what it is. Like, I mean, that's kind of thick for a romance. How many pages is that? Over 400 pages. Yeah, it was a little slow at times, got a little bit boring, but it still was not bad. I do think I'm gonna finish this series because the third one seems to be everyone's favorite, and it's the last, so I might as well. I think I like the first one better, but this one, maybe like a 3.5. Actually, no, that's a 3. Literally, what am I talking about? That's a 3. And then I also read Serpent and Dove. This is by Shelby Marin. Mahurin? I'm so sorry. But that's this book. This is about a girl who is a witch. She lives in this world where the witches are hunted, and she finds herself in an arranged marriage with like the top witch hunter. So of course I thought that that premise sounded very, very interesting. But in this one, it did get a little bit boring for me as well. I also felt like there wasn't enough tension. These two are supposed to be enemies to lovers, but immediately, like once they had to get married, the tension between them kind of stopped and slowed down a lot. But like, no, I don't care if you're married now. I still want you to hate each other. And it just wasn't giving that. But it still wasn't bad. There is like a plot twist that I was able to guess pretty early on. But besides that, like I wasn't bored while reading it. It was okay. It's just, again, it's not one of my like favorite fantasies because there's just so much more that I like out there, but still not bad. And then I read Immortality, a love story by Dana Schwartz. This is the second slash last book in a duology. The first one was Anatomy. These I would consider suspenseful romances. In the first one, we're following Hazel. She is a woman that wants to become a surgeon, but in this world, women are not allowed to. But she makes a deal with a professor that if she can pass the exams without having to go to classes, then she can become a surgeon. In order to do that, she needs bodies to practice on, and in comes Jack. He is a resurrection man, so he digs up dead bodies and sells them to people, and he's gonna sell them to Hazel so that she can start practicing on her own. And the way that book ended was so unexpected, and it left off on like a huge cliffhanger. So in this one, it's very hard to talk about because you are just picking up right where that one left off. But I really love this duology. It's another series where I am literally always going to be thinking about them, and I will always talk highly of it. I just loved it so much. And this one was good, but as with most, I do not feel like it was as good as the first one, especially because this one focused a little bit less on the romance. The first one is a 5-star, this one is a 4, because it was still really good, and I like the way everything wrapped up and everyone got their happy ending. I think so. So that is that one. Okay, and then the last 4 books that I have to talk about were actually in my most recent video, and these are all of my 5-star predictions. As you may know, none of them are 5 stars. But the first one that I thought would be was When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. And I want to say that I loosely thought this could be a 5-star because I have heard so many mixed reviews. But in this one, we are following Rave. She is an assassin and like part of this rebellion group. But then she gets caught and she is arrested. And in comes Khan, I think that's how you say it. He rescues her from this prison. And now they're just like on this journey together. And slowly she's figuring out that she has a past that she just completely forgot somehow. And you're kind of going along with her. The world building can get very confusing in this book, and while the premise might sound very interesting, it is very, very people driven. When I think of a plot, there really is none. Like, kind of throw what I said about the assassin part and her getting imprisoned and then rescued out the window, because that all happens in the beginning, and then the rest of it is just like these little side things that keep happening, but it's mostly about her and all the other characters in the book. So a lot of people aren't gonna love it. I personally didn't love this book, but I still enjoyed my time with it. I gave it 3 stars as well because it's just, again, there are better fantasies out there, but it does set up for a good series, and I do want to continue when the other book comes out. Don't know when that will be, probably forever. Hopefully I can remember what happened in this one, which it's not looking too good right now, because I'm not going to reread this whole thing and then read the second one. You know what I mean? Like, not happening. But anyways, yeah, this can be pretty boring. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. If you don't like people-driven books, you're not gonna love it. But there are like dragons, and the world seems very cool. It's very different than anything I've ever read in my life. So yeah, that's really all I've got for that one. And then I read The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This is about a girl who, her father just came back from Vietnam, and he has some major trauma after that. He's just not the same anymore. He can't really hold a job. Their family is always moving around, and they end up moving to Alaska in 1974. When they get there, it's all about them adjusting to living in Alaska, because there's a lot of rules when it comes to living there, whether it is the winter or the spring or the summer. There's always something going on, and you have to be prepared. So it's about their family dynamic, and as you're following along with our main character, you're seeing her start to grow up, because they do stay in Alaska for a very long time, and you're seeing the drama between their family because her father is a domestic abuser, and you're also seeing her meet people from the town, grow up, fall in love, all of that kind of stuff, while also dealing with her home life. And then you also get to see her in the future as an adult. And there's a lot more that happens, but obviously I'm not going to ruin it. I feel like this author always writes very realistic fiction. Like, these things do happen to people in real life, and that's what kind of makes her books hit kind of hard, and they can be emotional. I always end up tearing up at least a little bit. I say always, even though this is the second book I've read by her, but still sad, okay? So be prepared. But I did like this one a lot, just not as much as I liked Nightingale, which I know I said that in the other video too, but I feel like a part of that was the landscape that we were in. I don't really care about this family, you know, chopping wood and working hard to survive in Alaska. Don't really care about that. That might sound rude, but I just don't. My personal preference. But it was still really, really good. I gave it 4 stars, and I would recommend it. And then I read another Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, and this was such a big letdown. In this one, we're following our main character. It's again that car breaks down trope, and now she has to stay with someone in this small town. But it's not just any small town. It is a small town from her favorite romance novels. That is like the magical element to this book. But she ends up meeting her favorite characters from her favorite romance and all the people that live in this town, even though it's not real, it's magic. But anyways, she's stuck there for a little bit. She does meet a love interest, and I really couldn't tell you anything else because I was pretty bored throughout this book. The beginning really was boring for me, and then like towards the end it did pick up a little bit, but then there was a third act breakup that literally made me hate everything about this love interest. I didn't even particularly like him that much to begin with, but the third act breakup really made me hate him. So yeah, this is like a 2.5. I was just very bored and don't really care for it. I can't even remember much about it, and I didn't read it that long ago. And then we have Red Rising, which is the last book that I read this month. This is a series by Pierce Brown. It is a very popular sci-fi series. It's very complex, this world, but basically our main character, he lives on Mars. He is kind of like a miner on this planet, and he is also a red. There's like a system. The reds are at the bottom of the pyramid, and at the top are the golds. He is going to basically join this rebellion against the golds, and in order to do that, he is going to turn himself into a gold and infiltrate their system and take them down from the inside. And so once he turns into a gold, he is going to like this academy for other golds. This academy, it's like a school where they're all competing, and then at the end they have to get apprenticeships with other higher ranking golds. So that's what he's working towards. And when he's there, it's like they're thrown into these little groups called houses. They're thrown into the wilderness, and they have to fight each other and build their own clans and like create slaves from other clans that they capture and take over. And it is so much that is happening, and it's such a very complex world, but it is so interesting, and I really did enjoy my time with it. It does give Hunger Games vibes slash, I would say, Lord of the Flies in a way. I've never read Lord of the Flies, but I know that the Gracier was described as being Lord of the Flies, and this kind of reminds me of that, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what is happening in this book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, but I don't feel 100% connected, which, don't get me wrong, I don't expect to. It's just that this is the first in the series, so I need to keep reading it in order to rate those ones higher, because like we all know, it's the first book, it's really good, but come on now, the rest of them, it just has to get better. They have to. So I don't want to start off the jump and give this one 5 when the second, third, or fourth book might be the real 5. Is my logicking? But yeah, anyways, that's that one. And those are all of the books that I read this month. If our opinions are not the same, that's fine. I'm personally happy that you enjoyed a book that I didn't, because then that means you didn't waste your time. So let me know what you thought. If you read any of these, give me some suggestions of books you think I might like. I'm always open to it. And what are you guys looking forward to reading this month? But yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!